بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء محمد المصطفى وعلى آله المجتبى رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما وزدنا حكمة والحمد لله على كل حال. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We'll continue from where we left off last week. We were speaking about the traveler's prayer. We defined who a traveler is. We mentioned that it's not just the intention of traveling, but it's physically making that journey. So when you start that journey and you're outside the boundary of your city or your village, that's when the traveler's prayer starts. And it's a traveler is someone who intends the journey of 57 according to one opinion, 55 rather according to one opinion, 48 miles according to another, and there's another opinion of even more, 60 something or 72 miles. And so you have these various different opinions, but the most important thing is that you take one and you stick with that rather than changing every single time. We're not allowed to take or use what is most convenient for us in that particular circumstance, but rather you take one opinion and you then you stick with that, you establish that opinion, you establish that sort of estimation as the travelers. And so that's really important to remember. And so we were speaking about who then has to pray the traveler's prayer. And this discussion now, if you know, I mean, as we're going through it, stop me if there's something that we don't understand, or if you need some clarification, please, just let me know, inshallah. So I don't want to be speaking about it and then taking your minds to somewhere through this discussion, and we're not really getting it, we're not understanding it. So just stop me and we can maybe just go through it again. Just clarify some things. So we're saying that someone who considers a place as their residential place, their home, what we call in Arabic watan asli, they don't have to pray traveler's prayer. They will be praying full prayer. So someone who is at home, the place they consider as watan asli, their initial home, their primary home, right? Their asli place. They don't have to pray the traveler's prayer there. When they get to that place, they must pray the full prayer. Whether they're in that place for 2 days or 4 days or 6 days or 10 days or 12 days, whatever. In that place, the place which they consider as the watan asli, their primary home, they must pray the full prayer. Right? That's number one. The second place where you pray full prayer is watanul iqama, the temporary home. And temporary home is established, right? We'll look at how it's established, but it's established through a condition. As long as that condition is there, that temporary home remains. Once the condition is no longer there, or once you move away from that temporary home and you make another home your temporary home with that condition, then the first temporary home, the previous temporary home, no longer ceases to exist as a temporary home for that person. So then they would have to pray the traveler's prayer in that home, right? So you have two places where you have to pray full prayer. Watan asli, the primary home, and watanul iqama, the temporary home. Iqama means to establish. So a watan, a place which you have temporarily established as your home, right? So temporary home. Okay, so watan asli is your main place of residence. Now what's considered as watan asli? How can you understand a place to be your watan asli? It's usually refers to place of birth, or place where one's family is, or a place where a person has taken permanent residence, right? And he doesn't intend to move away from that. He doesn't intend to settle away from that place, right? You can change your watan asli. Like for example, some people move away from the UK, right? The expats, right? They will move away from the UK and they'll go and live in another country. They have now made that home their watan al asli, right? That's now their home. Though it's not the birthplace, but it's the place where it's a place which they have taken to be their permanent residence, right? So that's their watan asli. Usually the watan asli is the place of birth or family home, right? For a person who is married, their family home is where their spouse is rather than where their parents are. And usually we use the term family home where parents are, right? I'm going to my family's house. That's not what we mean here. By family home, we mean the place where your spouse is, where you're living, rather than the place of your parents. If the place of parents is 70, 80, 90 miles away, then that's not your watan asli. Similarly, for a woman who is married and moved away from her parents' house and moved into her husband's house, or moved into a family house, and that place, that house is at a distance of a traveler's distance. It's more than 48 miles or 56 miles or 70 something miles. Then in that case, her home, her watan al asli now would be the husband's house and not her parents' house. If a woman was to go to her parents' house for a few days, then she would actually be praying traveler's prayer. That's not her watan al asli, right? And so remember, we said the traveler's prayer is important. It's wajib. It's not one of those one of those types of rukhsas, of dispensations, in which we have a choice. We don't have a choice in this dispensation, where Allah hasn't given us a choice in this, but rather we have to fulfill the command of Allah in praying or shortening the prayer. That is the duty. And so we have to understand where and when do we shorten the duty, when do we shorten the prayer. And so for a woman who is married and has moved away, then her watan al asli would then be the place where she now lives with her spouse, rather than her parents' house, if her parents' house falls outside the that mileage. Okay. Now, a question can arise: can we have more than one watan al asli? You generally only have one watan al asli. You only have one place of or permanent home. You can't have more than, and when you move away from one place to another, that second place becomes now the watan al asli, and it makes void the first place. The first place no longer becomes watan al asli, unless you consider or you have a permanent residence in two places. This is often the case with people that have migrated to countries like the UK and America and so on and so forth, and they've migrated or have families in other countries. We also now have houses that belong to us in countries like Pakistan or other countries, right? India and so on and so forth. So those houses belong to us. We have a house here too. That's our house, our family's house, and that too is our house, our family's house. In that case, then, if it's a case like that, then there you have two watan al aslis. If the house belongs to you, then that's watan al asli. As long as it's not been rented out, given to someone else to live in that case, that's not watan al asli. If it belongs to you and you are the rightful owner and you can live in that house, not just the rightful owner, but you can live in the house, then that's your watan al asli too, right? So these are rare cases where you can have two watan al aslis, but generally, and even there's disputes. I mean, some scholars say that once you moved from one place to another, you are making that previous house or home void. If you've taken a new home as your permanent residency, like, you know, we that's exactly what it's called. When you come here, you have a residency, right? So once you have become a resident of the United Kingdom, then you have actually technically given up the Watan Asli in Pakistan. So you're truly a British. You're not a dual nationalist, right? You're not a Pakistani British. So that's a you know, within the scope of fiqh, there are those disagreements and disputes and difference of opinions as to whether you can have two Watan al-Aslis or not. Okay. So some consider two Watan al-Aslis. Others say no. You can only have one Watan al-Asli. The second becomes your Watan al-Asli. The first becomes void. So now, as soon as now that we have defined what Watan al-Asli is, we understand what Watan al-Asli is. As soon as a person comes back to Watan al-Asli, the moment they enter the boundaries of his or her Watan al-Asli, they become a resident, and they would have to pray the full prayer, even if they're there for half a day, even if they're there for, you know, less than just a few hours. They would pray full prayer. They would make the full prayer. Maybe they're out traveling for, you know, months and months, and they only go home for half a day or one day. Well, when they are home, they would pray the full prayer. When they are outside traveling, they would, you know, unless a place becomes Watan al-Iqama for them, with the condition that we're going to mention, unless that happens, they would be praying traveler's prayer. They could be praying traveler's prayer all year round. They come home for one day, and that one day, then they would have to pray the full prayer, because it's that's now, you know, that's fiqh. That's now the principle. So a Watan al-Asli, where they are residents, where you know, the residents of that place, they would pray the full prayer. Okay. As for Watan al-Iqama, like I said, Iqama means to establish something. Aqimus salah, establish the prayer. Iqama, Watan al-Iqama is a place of establishment. It's a place which you have established or which you have made as your temporary home. How do we make a place a temporary home? It refers to that place which is not Watan al-Asli, but you intend, or where a person intends to remain for 15 or more days, 360 hours or more, right? So if a person intends to remain in a place for 15 or more days, that automatically now becomes their Watan al-Iqama. What I'm mentioning is that they intend to stay for 15 or more days. Not that they stay 15 or more days, right? But the moment I make an intention, if I'm going to visit my family, right, and I'm going to spend the entire summer there, right, my auntie's house or my grandparents or something like that, and I intend to remain the entire summer there. If that's my intention, then though that's not my Watan al-Asli in Manchester, right, because I intend to stay there more than 15 days, 15 or more days, that now becomes my Watan al-Iqama, and so I have to pray full prayer from day one. From the moment I arrive, from the moment I set foot into, or the moment I enter the boundary of that city, I will pray the full prayer, right? It may be the case that you don't actually remain for 15 days or more. It may be that after a week, something happens and you have to return back to your Watan al-Asli, to your home, right? Or have to go somewhere else. If that's the case, then that is the case. That doesn't make any difference to your prayer. You would have been praying you would have been praying full prayer because you have considered that place to be Watan al-Iqama. Let's say after 5 days, your intention has changed. Actually, rather than staying 6 weeks, you're now intending that I'm only going to remain here for another 3 days, right? And so now we've come back down below 15 days. So you've only been there for 5 days, and now you intended to stay for 3 days. In that case now, you would now switch to, you were praying full prayer, you would now switch to praying qasr prayer, because the intention has changed now. And remember, we've said that journey is with intention. It starts with the intention, right? And then from there, the action itself, right? And so if you stop, if the intention changes, then in that case your prayer changes too. So you're now no longer considered a muqim, a temporary resident, but now you're considered back as a traveler, right? And so you'd have to pray traveler's prayer. Okay. Let's say someone is staying in Manchester, and that's their Watrul Iqama, right? Now, as long as they remain in Manchester, they would pray the full prayer as long as it's Watrul Iqama, because that's now been established. So I go to visit my family in Manchester from High Wycombe. I use Manchester. I don't know where some people may be tuning in from, but from where we are in High Wycombe near London, Manchester fulfills the conditions of being a traveler, right? It's however many miles, 200 miles or something. So if I'm going to travel to a family to visit family, and they and I'm going with the intention of staying there for more than 15 days, so I have made their home, that place, my temporary residence. So that becomes my Watrul Iqama. Now, if I was to travel from there, right, to a different place, right? If I was to travel from there to Bolton, which is within the range, then I wouldn't be praying full prayer. But if I was to travel from there to another 60 miles, 70 miles or more, then I would have to pray traveler's prayer. Unless I travel to somewhere and I make that place and I intend to stay in that place for more than 15 days, now that place becomes my Watrul Iqama. I will pray full prayer in that place. And now Manchester, if I was to come back to Manchester, I would have to pray traveler's prayer. I don't know if that makes sense. If I had a map here, I would just draw things or whatever, just align it to show you. But from Manchester, what's 70 miles from Manchester? What's further on? Newcastle? That's beyond 70 miles, right? From Manchester. No? Don't know? It is, I think it is. So Newcastle, further on, it's a problem. No, Doncaster can't be. Okay, this is coming back. Let's go further up, right? So Newcastle, right? So if I was to, from Manchester, I decided actually I don't like staying at this auntie's house. I want to go to my auntie's in Newcastle, right? And I want to stay there for, and I intend to stay there for 15 days or 20 days. If that's the case, then that now has become my Watrul Iqama. And I can't have two Watrul Iqama, so therefore the Manchester Watrul Iqama becomes void now. So now I am, if I made a new place, Newcastle, as my Watrul Iqama, Manchester is void. Manchester is no longer my Watrul Iqama. Let's just say I'm in Newcastle for 5 days or 6 days. I'm staying there for more than 15 days, so I'm praying full prayer, but I intend to visit Manchester again. If I'm to visit Manchester, which is now beyond 70 miles, 80 miles, I would pray traveler's prayer. Even though when I was in Manchester, I was praying full prayer initially, but that was because I made it my temporary home. And now it's no longer my temporary home because another place is my temporary home, right? It's really what's your intention, right? And so the intention is linked with the number of days that you're there. And so in Manchester, I'm only there for 1 day or 2 days. And so therefore that can't be my Watrul Iqama. It's definitely not my Watrul Asli because that's here in High Wycombe. And so therefore I would be praying the traveler's prayer in Manchester. Is that clear? Right. That just as a side point, I'd like to mention that when we are traveling, it doesn't matter where we're going, right? Even if you're traveling to like Umrah or Hajj, if you're praying behind the Imam and the Imam is a muqim, is a resident, then you pray the full prayer behind the Imam because you're behind the Imam, right? And that prayer would be valid. That would count. That's fine, right? However, if you're praying on your own, or someone from your group or someone who's also a traveler is leading the prayer and you're a traveler, then you must pray the traveler's prayer. So if you're gone to, Umrah or Hajj, and I mentioned this example because I see this it's quite common. People pray the full prayer, right? Not behind the Imam. Of course, behind the Imam is a full prayer anyway, but when they're praying on their own, or when one of the travelers is leading, then they are praying the full prayer, even though they're not staying there for more than more than 15 days, 15 or more days, right? So when we go to Umrah and Hajj and so on and so forth, or any other country, and we're there for short period of time, then you pray traveler's prayer. Yeah. Are we okay with that? Did we understand that? Right, just drop some comments so I know that we're following, inshallah. Okay. So we'll move on, inshallah. If there's any questions regarding the traveler's prayer, then just put it in the chat, and we'll come back to it at the end. But so we're moving on to the Friday prayer and its conditions, right? The Juma prayer and its conditions. As a general principle, we have to remember that a Friday prayer is a communal duty. It's a fard kifaya almost, right? I know, some people may argue and say no, it's fardul ain, of course, but it's only fardul ain when it fulfills the conditions, and one of the conditions is that jama'ah, right? So the Friday prayer cannot happen without a jama'ah, without gathering. The gathering has to be there for the Friday. That's one of the conditions. Whereas that's not a condition for your normal prayer, right? Which is a personal obligation. And so it's like a communal obligation that as a community you have to come together and make the prayer. And any communal duties which need a group, and Friday prayer needs a group, that's one of the conditions, that there must be 3 or more people that are in the prayer. Any communal duty which needs a group now needs or requires leadership and permission to fulfill. So any communal obligation which requires a group needs permission, requires leadership, and needs permission for it to be fulfilled, right? So Friday prayer essentially needs permission for it to be fulfilled, right? And that permission is granted by the hakim, the leader, the ruler, the khalifa, right? In the absence of the khalifa in a non-Muslim country, then we come down to other levels of authority, but ultimately Juma can only take place if the hakim gives permission, if the leader or the ruler gives permission for Juma to take place, since it's a communal obligation which requires a group, right? And so just remember that as a principle. We'll come back to that, inshallah. But Friday prayer cannot be prayed unless the conditions are fulfilled. So there's 2 types of conditions. There's conditions for the for once the prayer is valid, right? And then there's conditions before the conditions for the validity of the prayer, right? So once the validity of the prayer is there, so we understand that Friday prayer can be done, then there are conditions for who will go to make the Friday prayer, who will perform the Friday prayer. So we're looking at now as to who will perform the Friday prayer. Who is Friday prayer fard upon, right? Friday prayer is fard upon male. Friday prayer is fard upon those that are free. So the opposite, those that are restricted in some way or another, those that are, for example, in prison, those that are stopped, those that are prohibited, and so on and so forth. Friday prayer is not fard upon them. Those slavery as well. So Friday prayer is not fard upon, though we don't have that, but as a concept that exists. Those that are mature, so those that have past puberty, Friday prayer is fard upon them. Those that have good health, it's not obligatory upon the sick. And by sick, we refer to such an illness or disability which makes it difficult for that person to go to the masjid. So if it makes it difficult, I mean, it doesn't have to be sickness, some sort of terminal sickness in which they're dying, but some disability. If they are disabled and they can't walk or they can't go to the masjid without help, without taking help from someone, they don't have to go to the prayer, right? It's not fard upon them. Juma is not fard upon them. Also, it's fard upon those that are muqim, those that are residents, the non-travelers. Anyone that's traveling, the Friday prayer is not obligatory upon that person. Of course, if they're okay and if they're easy and they can pray, then they should pray, right? That it's a dispensation of choice here again, like the fasting, right? So if you're good to fast, if you're okay to fast, even though you're traveling, it's better for you to fast. Similarly, if you're okay to pray and be part of the Friday prayer, even though you're traveling, then make the Friday prayer. Okay, and it's obligatory or fard upon those that are sane, soundness of the mind. So it's not fard upon mentally unwell people, right? And remember, Juma is a sign, it's a symbol of Islam, right? It's a symbol of Islam that's now distinguished by special conditions, right? And so some conditions are to do with who goes to the Juma prayer, and some conditions are to do with the establishment of the Juma. Do we even have a Juma, right? And so now once we have a Juma, then it's these conditions that must be fulfilled. So now we're going to look at what are the conditions for even the establishment of Juma, right? For this religious right, for this duty, right? And just one small point that I want to make here. Religious rights and duties which are to be fulfilled publicly, like the Juma prayer. It's a religious right. It's a duty that needs to be fulfilled publicly. It's an act that's indicative of the presence and establishment of Islam. It's one of those things that that's a symbol, or it's a sign of Islam, and it's a duty now that it's preserved in this way, right? It's a duty of the entire society to preserve these things as much as possible, like the Friday prayer, like the adhan, like the jama'ah, the gathering, like the Eid prayers, like the takbir of the shriek, like the ritual hajj, like the ritual sacrifice, the qurbani, and so on and so forth. These are religious rights and duties, and preservation of these is incredibly important, right? And so we have to preserve them and hold on to them as much as we can. Okay, so what are the conditions for the establishment of Juma, right? How is what are the things that must be there for Juma to be established? So the validity of the Friday prayer. The first is the city. The first condition is that Juma must take place in a city, right? And so now there's various different opinions defining city. What is a city? A city is defined as having many streets. In the books of fiqh, it's a place which has district, many marketplaces, different areas. It's a place which may have a governor or a person in authority who provides justice to the oppressed. These are all different definitions of a city. In historically, like you can see in the picture, it would have been easier to define or to see a city. A city is, it's walled really. There's a boundary around the city, right? So everything inside, this is a city because it has different marketplaces and many streets and so on and so forth, right? Modern day, what is considered as a city, there's probably different understandings of what a city is, but from what I can remember, any place which has a cathedral, or I'm talking about modern day UK, any place which has a cathedral, I think is considered as a city, right? Maybe you can, someone can Google that and check what is considered, what is the definition of a city. But Juma is only established in city or the outskirts of a city. In other words, it is not established in a village. Juma can't be in a village. And that's why some of you might know this, but those that have been Pakistan and those that have lived there or been there and seen there, you would see that in your own small villages, there are mosques, there's plentiful mosques, but when it comes to the Friday prayer is only established or only takes place in one big Jami'ah masjid, right? So everyone actually goes to that Jami'ah masjid, right? And so it would mean that leaving your village and going to a different place, a city or outside your village, and that's where Juma is established, because that's really the point of it. Juma is a big gathering. It has to be the biggest gathering. It can't be, right, 10 different mosques holding 10 different Jumas just on that same street, in that same village, or in that same town. It's better for there to be one big gathering of Juma than for there to be 10 small gatherings, because it defeats the purpose, right? A Juma is supposed to be one large gathering, and that's why one of the conditions is that it has to be in the city, right? So that's where people will gather, that's where people will come. It'll break these small masajid, holding Jumas. That's the idea. That was the idea, right? We have probably quite a few, sort of logistical issues with that. One being that our masajid, there's no one big Jami'ah masjid that could hold this number of people, and so therefore it becomes difficult to just hold one Juma in one place. It becomes extremely difficult. Also, there's in terms of the fulfilling of conditions, there's probably other more important conditions that are probably not being filled because we are in this country, and so therefore the condition of city now it's not so important. Or maybe if we were to hold on to this condition, many people would miss Juma, and the spirit of the religion demands that people are connected to Deen in one way or another. And it may be that a person is only connected through praying Juma in their local masjid, and if you remove that, then they are completely disconnected from their religion. And so to keep the spirit of the religion, Juma is held in many different places, even though they are not Jamia Masjid, or they're not cities, right? Okay. The second condition is ruler. So the second condition is that there must be a ruler who gives, not just gives permission, but historically, ruler would have been the one that delivers the Juma. He is the one that delivers the khutbah, right? And if he doesn't deliver the khutbah, then the ruler gives permission for someone to deliver the khutbah. So there's no dispute. Now remember, if there's all the villages are coming to this one masjid, which means that all the imams of that village are going to come to that one masjid. If there's 15 imams in one masjid, there's going to be a dispute. Well, who's going to lead the Jummah, right? All these imams are, mashallah, big mashayikh, and they've got the, it's now not going to be dependent on who's got the biggest jubba and who's got the longest hat. There needs to be a system. And so it's the ruler, the hakim, the khalifa, the greatest authority that will permit, right, give permission for one person or one imam to lead the prayer, right, or to lead the khutbah. He will appoint the imam, right? So either the hakim, the ruler himself, will lead, or he will appoint an imam, right, to lead the Jummah prayer, to lead the khutbah, to deliver the khutbah, and so on and so forth. And without the ruler, there is no Jummah, because it doesn't fulfill the condition. Again, it's the same issue that we will have in this country again, that we don't have. It's a non-Muslim country, and so we don't have a ruler, right? And so there's no that condition is missing. Then if there's no ruler, then who is appointing the imam to lead the Jummah in our masajid? It's now the authority is down to the mosque committee. They're the ones that appoint the imam. And so do they even have that authority? So again, to keep that spirit of the deen, right, to keep people connected to the religion, Jummah is established despite there not being a ruler. And if there's no, as from the point of fiqh, if there is no ruler, if there's no Muslim ruler, then the most senior jurist will be will take authority and will be in place of that Muslim ruler. He will have the authority to establish the Jummah prayer. He will have the authority to appoint someone as an imam. If this doesn't exist, if there is no jurist, then the authority is given to the general public. They can appoint someone as an imam, right? If of course, amongst the general public there is another seat above them, which is the ulama seat. If there's ulama, then the scholars are the ones that will appoint someone in charge and appoint the imam in that masjid, and so on and so forth, right? So ruler is the second condition. The third condition of Jummah is the timing of the prayer, Dhuhr prayer. So it has to be within the Dhuhr prayer. For the Hanafis, it has to be once Dhuhr has started. I know there's the opinion of the Hanbalis for the khutbah can start before the Dhuhr timing, and as long as the Jummah takes place within the Dhuhr timing. This is not the case for the Hanafis. For the Hanafis, Jummah prayer must take place. The khutbah and the prayer must take place within the Dhuhr time, right? So the start of Dhuhr is the moment the sun moves away from zenith. We've spoken about that previously when we looked at the timings of the prayers, right? And the end time of Jummah is with the ending of the Dhuhr. So really, Jummah can take place at 4 p.m., right? 4:30 p.m., 5 p.m. I know there are mosques, not so many in South. I don't know of any in South, but there are mosques in North that hold their Jummah at 4 p.m., right? To make it easy for the student. This is of course in summer, to make it easy for the students that are at schools, right? So they hold the Juma, they delay the Juma until 4 p.m. And once the students return, they can be part of it. Okay. So that's the third condition. The fourth condition of establishing Juma, the validity of Juma, is khutbah. Juma must contain a khutbah. All right, two khutbahs, in fact. Right, so Juma has khutbatain, and the minimum amount of khutbah is to say any form of dhikr. If someone was to say Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, let's stand up for prayer, this would be valid, right? It's any form of dhikr. That's the bare minimum. That's what makes it valid. But of course, you know, like the prayer, there is the fard of the prayer, then there's wajibat that perfect the fard, then there's sunnah that perfect the wajibat, and so on. This is the bare minimum, but this is not the sunnah, right? The sunnah is more than this, right? So the bare minimum, though, is to say any form of dhikr with these conditions. There are 6 conditions. The first is that the khutbah must be delivered before the prayer, right? So in Eid, during Eid prayer, the khutbah is delivered after the prayer. But for Jummah prayer, the khutbah is delivered before the prayer. So that's a condition. For the khutbah to be delivered before the prayer, it must be delivered with the intention of khutbah. It must be delivered within the timing of dhuhr. We mentioned this is the Hanafi position, whereas the other schools might differ in this. But the khutbah must start within the dhuhr timing. According to the stronger opinion, at least 3 people must be present other than the khatib. And these 3 people must be male, sane, and legal adults. So in the Jummah prayer, from the point of khutbah, there must be 3 people that must be present other than the one that is delivering the khutbah. And all 3 must be male, they must be sane, and they must be mature adults for the khutbah to be valid, for the Jummah to be valid. And there must not be a large gap between the khutbah prayer and the khutbah and the prayer caused by any action or speech which is unrelated to the khutbah or the prayer. E.g. eating, but more commonly, right, I don't know, someone has parked irresponsibly outside the masjid. So what happens between the khutbah and the prayer? There is now a announcement, right? Brothers and sisters, registration number this has parked outside in front of the gate on the road, right? They've left the car on the road and they've come in to pray the Jummah, right? There's a gap now between the Jummah, the khutbah, and the prayer itself, right? And so it's a condition from the conditions of khutbah for the validity of the Jummah prayer, that there must not be a gap between the khutbah and the prayer. As soon as you see the second khutbah takes place, the iqamah is called and the prayer stands, right? Everyone stands for the prayer. And finally, the khatib make the sermon audible. So the khutbah must be loud, it must be heard by everyone, and it must be in Arabic. Now, this is the opinion of Sahibain, though Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala does say that khutbah is allowed in any language. And so you see what happens is often, I mean, at least in the Pakistani, generally in the Indian subcontinent communities, you have what we have the bayan, right? The Urdu or the Punjabi or in any other language, in Bengali, you have the bayan, right? That's the advice, that's the counsel, that's the nasiha that's given to the people. And then you have the khutbah just before the prayer. You have the 2 khutbahs in Arabic. So in Arabic is to fulfill the condition of the khutbah, right? Now you also see that in other places you will only have 2 khutbahs. You don't have this bayan that's different, and then the prayer is the adhan is called and then you have the Arabic khutbah. No, so it's a mixture, right? Because the conditions are fulfilled, right? So as long as the conditions are fulfilled, there is some Arabic part in the khutbah, and then you can have English within that, or you can have your any other language, and then you know you have a second khutbah, and then straight after the second khutbah there's the prayer. This is valid, right? So it fulfills the conditions of the khutbah, and as long as it fulfills the conditions of the khutbah, it fulfills the conditions of the Juma prayer. Okay, so that's the fourth condition of the validity of the Juma prayer, or the establishment of the Juma prayer. Just before we look at the fifth one, just a couple of points. In the khutbah, we've said what is the bare minimum. The bare minimum is to make any form of dhikr. But it's desirable, it's mustahab to have a verse of the Qur'an in the khutbah, to have a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ as a form of counsel for the people, giving advice to the people. And those that are sitting, it's wajib for them to listen to the khutbah attentively as if they are in prayer. And this is why you see, especially our elders, they would sit in the khutbah as if they are sitting in the prayer, right? Or they are making the prayer. And so the two khutbahs are actually treated as a 2 rak'ah prayer. You don't talk in it, you don't look around in it, you sit in it as if you are in the prayer, in the qiyam. So in the first khutbah, people fold their hands as if they are in qiyam, as if they are in standing position. In the second khutbah, you would see often people let go of their hands and place it on their thighs, as a form of tashahhud, right? It's like sitting in tashahhud, right? And so you know, this is the reason why they do this is because khutbah is treated, or listening to khutbah attentively, it's like being in prayer, right? And so you listen to it as if you are in prayer, right? And likewise the khutbah of Eidain and nikah and so on and so forth, it must be it's you know, it's listened to as if you are in prayer, right? So you must remain attentive within it. Okay, just before we go on to the fifth condition of the establishment of the Juma, if someone is, for example, praying their prayer, their nafil prayer or their sunnah prayer, and the khutbah starts, right? Now we've said khutbah you have to listen to attentively. What do you do? So if you're praying your namaz, your salah, and then the imam gets onto the pulpit to deliver the khutbah, what should you do, right? So number one, right, there's a few scenarios here on this. So if you're praying 2 rak'ah nafil prayer, and you are you're on the first rak'ah, or you're about to, you know, you're in the second rak'ah, you're about to finish, recommended for you is that you just finish it as quickly as possible, right? Finish it in a fast pace, and be attentive for the rest of the khutbah, right? If, for example, you're praying a 4 rak'ah nafil prayer and you haven't reached the third rak'ah, you're still on the first, or you're finishing off the second, then don't complete the prayer. If it's a nafil prayer and it's 4 rak'ah, then just do salam at the second, after the first sitting, after the second rak'ah, make salam, and that's it, right? And then afterwards you can maybe, you know, make the prayer again. Okay, but if you're in your third rak'ah, so you've done the first tashahhud, right? You've stood up, back up. Now if you're on your third rak'ah, then finish the prayer off. Make the third and the fourth as quickly as possible, and listen to the khutbah attentively. If you're praying sunnahs, 4 sunnahs, and you've only prayed 1 rak'ah or 2 rak'ah, then according to one opinion, you should only make 2 rak'ah, right? Say salam and finish the prayer, and then make the sunnahs later on. According to one opinion, you should just continue and finish the prayer off, complete all units. If you're in your third or fourth rak'ah of sunnah prayer, then complete it. Then finish the rest of it as quickly as possible and join the khutbah. But the point is, in all of this, that khutbah is incredibly important, to listen to it attentively, right? the Sahaba, when they would listen to the khutbah of from the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they would be so attentive. They would be sitting with such calmness, right, and so motionless that the narration says that a bird could come and sit on their head, thinking that it's a statue, right? That's how much lack of movement that the Sahaba would have when they're listening to khutbah, right? And so the point is that the khutbah must be listened to attentively, believing everything, to the extent that the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if someone is distracted or is talking or is making noise, right, during khutbah, then it's bad for you to turn to them and say, right, shh, listen to the khutbah. Though there's nothing wrong that you're doing. In fact, you are giving them nasiha, but that much from you is bad. Like if someone's doing something, leave it. For you, because if you're in prayer, for example, and you do that, right, will that break your prayer? Yes, it does break your prayer. Right? Even if you think you're doing the right thing, right? Even if you think that you're doing something really good, it still breaks your prayer, right? And so khutbah takes that kind of ruling. It's as if you're in prayer, so you can't even do that much, right? And so it's important to listen to khutbah attentively. That's that was the fourth condition. Two more conditions. The fifth condition of establishing the Juma prayer is a general permission, right? There should be a general permission for all Muslims to attend the Juma prayer, right? Such that if the door of the masjid were locked after most of the people were gathered, then the Juma prayer was performed, it is not valid, right? So if the door of the masjid was locked and some people couldn't enter, then that means that general permission wasn't given, and so therefore Juma wouldn't be valid. This is, of course, in normal circumstances. We did have those circumstances that we unprecedented circumstances that we have just lived through, where the doors of the masajid were closed. They had to be closed, right? There were only a certain number of people that the masajid allowed for the Jummah to be prayed during COVID. All of those are exceptions. I mean, and fiqh allows, there's scope for that, right? And so it's understanding the principles. It's what is set there. It's what are we working off. This is what we're working off. I'm not giving you, what happens. Reality is different, right? But I'm telling you, this is fiqh. This is what we work off. This is our model. Once you understand the model, then you can work off that, right? And so the model is that one of the conditions of the establishing of Jummah is idhn am, right? So general permission, and so the doors of the masajid should not be closed, right? Because of fear that more people will coming and so on and so forth, because that will now make the Jummah invalid, right? However, there's one small, if women are stopped from attending the Jummah prayer, then that doesn't fulfill that doesn't that will not go against the condition, because it's not fard upon women. Jummah is not fard upon women, right? And so we're talking about the prevention being for men to attend the Jummah prayer, right? That would fulfill the condition. Okay. There's also the scholars have said that this is, for this reason, Jummah is not allowed to be held in places like prisons, in places like high secure prisons and so on and so forth, because there's no general permission for the local people to attend, or for people from outside to attend, right? And so therefore Jummah is invalid in these places. However, if scholars have said that if Jummah regularly does take place in these places, then it shouldn't be stopped, because again, it's a means for people to have some sort of connection to their religion. It's that spirit of the religion that comes back, right? As a model, this is the case. But then what's reality? The reality is if people don't pray Juma, if they don't engage with Juma, then they have no engagement with their religion, right? And places like prisons and so on and so forth, the only time that they are allowed to engage with their religion, if they're allowed to speak to the imam and so on and so forth, is on the day of Juma, when they come and pray the Juma, right? It's so for that reason, the scholars have said or have permitted Juma to take place in these kind of places. And finally, the final condition of Juma is congregation. At least 3 male who are sane and legal adult must be present for the Juma. If there's only 2 people, Juma can't take place. If there's only the imam and 1 follower, or imam and 2 followers, Juma cannot take place. There must be 3 males, right, who are sane, who are legal adults, and then the imam, right? And that's the final condition of the validity of establishing the Juma. Right, now, all of these conditions have to be there for Juma to be valid, for it to take place, right? For it to be established in a place. That's the model, right? In reality, in the country that we live in, are all those conditions fulfilled? I mean, for certain, the condition of a ruler is not fulfilled, right? So there is no ruler, and so if there's no ruler, then is the Juma valid? Does the Juma take place? Well, it comes back to the spirit of the religion. And so the ulama, the scholars, have said that Juma is valid. I mean, according to many of them, Juma is valid in this country, and so therefore it should be prayed, it should be established, it should be held in the masajid. For those that say it's not valid, what do? They may pray Juma, and then following the Juma, they pray something called ihtiyatul dhuhr. They pray 4 rakah dhuhr prayer, or they pray a 4 rakah prayer, in which they intend ihtiyatul dhuhr, being on the safe side, being cautious, and make an intention to pray 4 rakah prayer, which can turn into dhuhr prayer if Juma is not valid, right? So if they're praying Juma and they prayed Juma, they follow that up with 4 rakah ihtiyatul dhuhr. So if, for example, Juma is not valid, then they have prayed their dhuhr, right? Because dhuhr is now fard upon them. And so if you want to be on the safe side, then after the 2 rakah fard of Juma prayer, you pray ihtiyatul dhuhr, 4 rakah ihtiyatul dhuhr. That's the intention, facing the Qibla, Allahu Akbar, and you pray 4 rakah like the fard prayer, right? So you pray, you read Fatiha and Surah in the first 2 rakah, and only Fatiha in the 3rd and 4th rakah, right? So according to some scholars, this is the safest position to hold, to pray Juma, right? Absolutely, go and pray Juma, but then follow that up with this ihtiyatul dhuhr, 4 rakah ihtiyatul dhuhr. Okay. Okay, so that brings us to the end of Juma. We will inshallah look at the conditions of Eidain next week, inshallah ta'ala. Yes, so we have 2 sessions remaining. So we will look at the Eid conditions of the Eid prayer next week. We will also look at the look at the Salatul Khawf, the prayer of Khawf, the prayer of fear, and then we will look at the Janazah prayer in our final session, inshallah. In our final session, we will have time for some Q&A at the end, and so I'll, last half an hour or so, I'll take some questions, inshallah. That will bring us to the end of Salah. So last, 20 something sessions that we have had, I've lost count. It's all been purification and prayer. And so when we restart, inshallah, we will restart with the chapters of fasting and zakat and hajj and so on. Barakallahu feekum. Any other questions? Yeah, any general questions? I mean, someone asked during wudu, is my wudu and prayer valid? Yes, of course. Passing wind is one of the invalidators of wudu, so your wudu will not be valid, so therefore your prayer will not be valid. Yeah, if there's any other questions, then just put them in the chat, inshallah.
You ask them what would be interested in studying.
Fiqh?
Yeah, marriage, age.
Everyone's going to be interested in that. That's going to come at some point, inshallah. If we take them back to remember I had that that slide where there were lots of topics on there.
Yeah, go on. Good question.
What's the question?
That's
If while praying Asr in the third rakah, Maghrib time enters, should we redo the Asr Salah with a Qada intention? Not for the Asr. For the Asr, you, as long as you catch it before the Maghrib time itself, before the sun sets, you finish the prayer off, right? And so there's no Qada for you in that case. Yeah. For other prayers, yes. I mean, like for Fajr, for example, if the sun starts to rise and you're praying Fajr, and you're like, you're in the sajda, or you're in the second rakah, your first rakah, and the time, the sun rises, it's 4:35 the sun rises, so now it's 4:35, then you'd have to do qada of that prayer at some point later, right? But for Asr, if you catch it within Asr time, then that's okay, you finish the prayer off.
this one.
No, it's not that one. It's 98. So we finished purification, and we have just finished the prayer. And as you can see, within the prayer, we looked at the prayer times, the call to prayer, the conditions and integrals, the mandatory sunnah acts of the prayer, all the way down to making up missed prayer. And we've just covered the traveler's prayer and the Juma prayer as well, right? So we've done all of this. These are the chapters just in prayer. And prayer is just one of the topics of under worship, right? So we did purification and then prayer. You've got like zakat, fasting, hajj, and then fiqh is much more than that. So then you have the mu'amalat, you have the topics under the fiqh of family, right? Like marriage, nursing, divorce, waiting periods of women, khula, separation, financial maintenance, nafaqa, you got child custody, and so on and so forth. It just keeps on going. And then once the family, the fiqh of family is it concludes, then you have the transactions, right? So within transactions you have sales and leasing and collateral, gifting, and so on and so forth, right? So these are really we're literally looked at one topic or two topics so far from fiqh, right? And from worship, because worship is the most important, and it's fard upon each and every one of us. And so we always start with worship, right? You can see we've done the prostration of forgetfulness, we've done the sick person's prayer, we've done the prayer on a ship, and by extension on a train and on a plane and in a car. We've done the prostrations of recital, we've done the traveler's prayer, we've now done the Friday prayer, we have got Eid prayer left, the Salat al-Khawf, the fair prayer, praying inside the Kaaba, and the funeral, the janaiz, right? So we've got three or four topics that are left, inshallah ta'ala. And so once we come to the end of that, then that's our prayer finished, and then we can move on to zakat and hajj, fasting and hajj, and so on. So, and once we've completed the worship, then inshallah, the by the will of Allah, the idea is to move on to family, to move on to fiqh of family. Yeah.
You were interested.
That's for you, sir. Brother Nabil has something to just add, inshallah, before we.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Just a quick reminder, if you are interested in joining us for the live classes for fiqh, for all the topics mentioned by Ustadh, you can do so by heading to KarimaAcademy.com, where you can sign up to the Karima Academy, and you will get access to not only this course, but over 12 or between 9 to 12 live classes we host every month, which is including the Seerah course, the Fiqh course, we have the History of Islam course, and then our one-off events that take place as well. Recently we had Dr. Sahib Saeed come down to deliver the tafsir of Surah Yasin, and alhamdulillah had an amazing turnout for that as well. If you're interested in all of our events and studying with us, this is the kind of tools and resources that we have. This class itself is a kind of insight into the experience of what it's like to just study with us at Karima. So yeah, if you're interested in signing up, please do so at KarimaAcademy.com, inshallah, and support our work. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.